Good evening. This is BelGeode, and we are back with some more X-Plane 11 in virtual reality. Howdy folks, and we are back here in X-Plane 11, and tonight I am going to show you an unconventional aircraft. This is the AeroG Aviation AG4 eVTOL. Now you may be wondering, what in the heck is an eVTOL? Well, I'll explain it to you. It stands for Electric Vertical Takeoff or Landing Aircraft. That is exactly what this thing does. It works as advertised, and as you can see, this one definitely leans more on the luxurious side. There is a reason for that too. This particular aircraft is designed as a passenger variant, so it can be like a taxi, if you will, or it can be a commuter aircraft. You can see we've got a little closet here. You can put your baggage and your coats and your hat and all that good jazz. We've got another little closet on this side here. There we go. And this particular project started as a drone. I believe the original was the UV4, and the UV4 morphed into this bad boy right here. As you can see, this thing is pretty much ready for VR. So we've got little teleport hotspots for passengers that want to sit down there. I will caution you on something until the developer fixes that. The floor of this aircraft is not standable. You can't stand on it. There is a fair bit of lineage to this aircraft, which I'm going to go into right now. So let's go back in time, specifically to 1958, where we have one of the first vertical takeoff or landing aircraft that featured a ducted fan. This was the Doak VZ4. Doak was one of the engineers at Douglas Aircraft Company who broke out and formed his own aircraft. As you can see, this design was pretty revolutionary, but unfortunately, it really didn't go too far. Now we'll jump forward in time to 1966, and one of my personal favorite VTOL aircraft, the Belle X-22. And I actually did a model of this one for Second Life, a video game that, believe it or not, is still actually going on and does have a strong aviation community. This particular aircraft also only made it through the prototype phase. It never actually really came to fruition. We'll skip the rest of the 20th century and we'll fast forward to last year, 2019, where our good buddies from Bell are back again. They unveiled at the CES convention the Belle Nexus, which is their entry for an air taxi. Now, Bell says that this thing should be flyable by about 2023. So if you're watching this video at the time of its release, you still got about 3 years to go. Now, if you know anything about me, you know I've been always enamored with the Jetsons flying car. Here it is, 2020. I always expected that I would have my flying car right now. But you know what? Aircraft, such as the one that I'm going to showcase to you, seem to be the closest that we're ever going to get for now. One of the things that I really enjoy about this aircraft is the fact that it was designed through the STEM program, or Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics grant. If you're not familiar with what that is, basically it gets kids into aviation. And by kids, I mean anywhere from elementary school all the way through till college. So what we're going to do is a full cold and dark startup here in X-Plane, and as you can see, I just started to turn on the battery. There are 4 of these, so we're going to need to hit all 4 batteries. There we go. And we're going to want to also have our avionics on, so we'll switch that on. And lo and behold, look what just happened. It's no longer dark back there. Now that should clue you into one thing. Those windows that we're looking at are not exactly windows. They're actually TVs. So we'll get our generators on here, and we'll also turn on our inverters, and we're going to hit our first little bugbear for this aircraft. It has fuel controls. So we need to turn this one on and that one on. And let me just be crystal clear to you folks. This is designed to be an electric aircraft. Why do we have fuel controls? I don't know. Anyway, we're going to get to something that I'm not too fond of. You'll notice we've got a G1000 here. In order to actually access this G1000 in VR, we have to do the worst thing for a VR user. We've got to click on it, and you'll notice it appears on your screen right now. I can't see that in VR. So I literally have to take off my headset, or at least, put it above my eyes, so that I can enter in our destination, which is going to be Titiaroa, roughly about 30 miles away from where we are right now, and I will spare you the time it takes for me to put it in. Alright folks, so we're back, and I've got Titiaroa entered in, so we will accept that, and there you can see our flight path. So now I got to put the headset back on and hit the center of the screen just to make it go away from your screen. That's a pain in the butt for VR users. VR users need complete functionality in the cockpit. Let's close our cabin exit there. And that was kind of weird. I noticed there's no sound. You're telling me that with all those hydraulic pistons there's no sound. Okay. Well, yeah, about that. Alright, let's put this thing into VTOL mode. Now bear in mind, we are not going to take off vertically. We're actually going to do a stall takeoff or short takeoff. However, I do want to start up the engines, which I am doing right now. And I kind of don't want this thing to move forward. I am assuming that we have the parking brakes on, but there is no parking brake lever that I can see, so I cannot confirm that. And there's no indication on the PFD or the ICAS or anything that tells me that our parking brake is on. So I have to trust on faith that X-Plane always starts with the parking brake active. Okay, but we're pretty much ready to go. So we're going to taxi, I guess, to the left. Yeah, I think I got enough space to do this. Alright, let us head to the runway, folks. So make sure you've got your seatbelts on because we are off. Before we go any further, I do want to issue a huge thank you to AeroG Aviation for the review copy of this aircraft. I promised that I would make this the very first video of 2020, and I am upholding that promise right now. Now, with that out of the way, I do have to say, for those of you who are interested in getting this aircraft, it is not as easy to fly as you might initially think. This is emergent technology. This is technology that is still being developed in real life, and honestly, you cannot expect that you're just going to hop into this thing and automatically figure it out. Like everything else, you'll even notice it in my credits, I will always tell you, read the manual. There's a reason for that. With that having been said, the manual too needs to be fleshed out a little bit more, but honestly, I don't think that's going to happen until there's actual test pilots for this thing in real life. Assuming, of course, it does make it to real life. Okay, so we're at our hold short here. We'll get our strobes on. The lights are all automatic on this, and I want to point out something here that I think is an area of opportunity. Take a look at this. This is the fuel controls, or the fuel window, if you will. There's no fuel in this thing, so all of that's empty. And then we have the flight controls, which, yeah, they give you basic information, but it really doesn't tell me a whole heck of a lot for me to want to stay on this page. Then we go to the hydraulics page. And on the hydraulics page, we've got ram air turbine. I'm pretty sure this thing doesn't have a ram air turbine. And then finally, the failures page. And again, there's things in there that don't seem to quite match up with what this aircraft is. So we definitely have some areas of opportunity, and honestly, between you and I, folks, The only screen that I'm really going to use is the engine screen, so we'll keep it on that one there. While we're on the subject here, we do have our radio stack here, which honestly looks like it was kind of pasted on, but we can interact with our transponder. I don't know why it put me at 1201, but I'm going to switch that to 1200, and we're going to turn that to alt, which I'm assuming is that one? No, it is not. That is test. Okay, so maybe we need to go back one. Right about there, perhaps? There we go. Okay, so we're at alt. See, this is why we need the controls that come with the G1000 in VR. So that way I can just do that with the G1000. But it looks like everything's pretty much set to go. So we're going to hang a left and we're going to taxi over to the runway threshold, and then I'm going to take you through a stall takeoff, or a short takeoff. Well, there's something I didn't anticipate. That windsock is awfully close. Okay, not gonna lie, that was a close call, but we did make it past the windsock without any issues, so it is time for brakes down and throttles up. And we are going to get the brakes off in a moment as soon as I make sure I have enough throttle power to take off. It is very difficult for me to gauge exactly how much power I need because of the fact that there's pretty much minimal instrumentation on this thing, and as you can see, there's a lot of things in the G1000 that are not even represented, so I can't really tell you what they are. But I do see red, and I'm hoping red is good in this case. That should mean that we've got enough power, so I'm going to take the brakes off. And here we go, slowly plodding down the runway. Oh my god, this thing flies like a beluga. No offense, but yeah, it does kind of feel like a beluga. I think I'm going to end up calling it that. Okay, but we are airborne. We are airborne. You can see our airspeed's going up. Our altitude is going up. This is awesome. I do promise you folks, this thing does get a little bit faster, but it's just because we've got the nacelles turned more to the upwards position than to the horizontal position why we're still going so slow. So while we're gaining altitude here, I am going to turn us around towards our flight path line. So let's do that real quick here as we're passing this little coral reef. And it does take a lot of power to keep this thing airborne. It has a natural tendency to kind of want to drop out of the sky, which I'm not quite sure how I feel about that, to be honest with you. You really got to apply full power, and it's kind of disconcerting because when you look at the ICAS in the middle there, or the ECAM, the engine controls basically, you see a lot of red and yellow. And if you know anything about aviation, or in particular with like modern glass cockpits, seeing red and yellow isn't exactly a good thing. Usually you try to keep it out of those levels for too long. But in this particular case, it would look like red or yellow are probably where we want to be to make sure we've got enough power and speed to actually fly this thing. Which is kind of weird because this thing is actually designed to be a lifting body. Now, a lifting body means that basically the body and the wings are kind of blended together so that the entire aerodynamic surface is used to help you gain more lift. And in theory, it does work. You can see we are actually starting to speed up quite considerably. And when we actually hit cruise speed, we're looking at close to about 300 knots for cruise speed on this thing with the nacelles full forward. That's pretty impressive. I don't care how you slice it. And actually that brings to mind a very good point. Let me go through some of the facts that were given to me by AeroG Aviation regarding this aircraft as we get close enough to turn on the autopilot and so on and so forth. I'll do that once we get closer there. Alright, so as you already figured, this is an electric VTOL aircraft with ducted fans. Ducted fans generally tend to be more efficient than just free-roaming props. 2 pilots, 10 passengers, cruise speed roughly of about 280 knots. I can pull this puppy up to about 300, no problem. It's got 6,400 horsepower in these 4 electric motors, and these are 3-phase AC induction motors rated at about 1,600 horsepower each, so you can do the math on that one. The propellers that we are using here are 5-blade composite variable pitch or constant speed propellers, and the propellers are kind of small, relatively speaking. They're about close to 4.5 feet in diameter. That's for the rear propellers. Now the front propellers are a little bit smaller than that. They're about 3.5 feet in diameter. How does that compare to the actual size of this aircraft? Well, the aircraft itself is about 41 feet long. It's about 17 feet tall. As you can see, it's got to be luxurious in order to hold all these people. And it's got a wingspan of roughly about 48.5 feet. That does include the nacelles. Alright, now that I got those facts out of the way here, I'm trying to work our autopilot. Okay, we want to be stable roughly around 3,300 feet here. I don't want to go too much higher because one thing I will tell you about this aircraft, it does not have pressurization or oxygen. I don't know if that's just an oversight on the part of AeroG Aviation or if they really did not intend for this thing to be used at higher altitudes, but whatever the case, you really can't go much higher than about 10,000 feet, otherwise all your passengers are just going to pass out. Probably the pilots too. Okay, I do have our nav hold on, and watching to see what's going on with this navigation here. It seems to be oscillating a little bit. We seem to have passed our flight path marker, but you can tell the flight director is trying to compensate for it. I don't mean to say it's doing a pretty poor job there. Yeah, we are not quite lined up on the purple line, but as long as we're heading in the right direction, you can probably see Titiaroa off in the distance. It's the lighter blue area amidst the dark blue area, so at least I know we're heading the right way. But for my sanity, I am going to take off the nav hold and I'm going to manually control the at least lateral direction of this aircraft. It looks like the altitude hold is working properly though, so we can stay at about 3,000 to 3,300 feet and we should be good to go. And I have pulled the throttle back just a little bit, so we're not exactly on full throttle, but as you can see with the visual representation, the red and the yellow there, The red would indicate that the front nacelles are operating basically at full power, and the rear nacelles are operating at a lesser power scheme. I don't know all the facts and figures when it comes to that, because again, it's not very well implemented as to what you're supposed to look for as far as RPM and so on. But it's going where I need it to go, which is all that counts. So let's hop in the cabin and check it out. Okay, and now we're in the back, and the first thing that I want to show you is, of course, AviTab. You may have noticed AviTab is there. AviTab is pretty much essential for VR users, but non-VR users can definitely benefit from it as well. It's got such things as a moving map, such as what I'm looking at right now, and I'm actually going to zoom that out a little bit so that we can see the ocean in between the two islands here in the Society Islands. There we go, that is good enough. AviTab is a free download. The link is in the video description below. And let's take a look at this view. This is incredible. This is some futuristic stuff. We've seen where Boeing wants to include this as part of their aircraft and so on and so forth. So yeah, that is pretty cool. I don't know how that would be implemented with the TV screen, since it's obviously curved screens and whatnot, but you know, it is what it is. And it does look pretty cool here in X-Plane, so I'm hoping that something like that can translate to real life. Alright, let's hop to another seat. There we go, and now we are on the left side, or the port side of the aircraft. You can see TTRO is getting a little bit closer, so we're going to have to hustle on this one, so that way I can get back into the pilot seat. So we're going a little bit further back. You can see the closet that I was telling you about. One thing I guess, request of the devs, do we really need two closets? Can we have one be a bathroom? Even if it's just a toilet and a sink. That's really all we need in a plane. I mean, if you think about it, if you're going to market this thing as like a biz jet, that's probably something we're going to need. Okay, so we're in the back seat here, and you can see our passenger ramp, and of course the hydraulics that I mentioned earlier, which have no sound whatsoever. Hopefully that'll be fixed. Shadows are a little odd, but that's an X-Plane thing that has nothing to do with this aircraft. The aircraft was designed properly. But I do notice that this back area is not textured. I don't know if that is also an oversight, but it might be something you might want to address there. Alright, let's head back up to the cockpit because we are getting ready to land. Okay, back in the driver's seat. Yay! Alright, and you can see TTRO off in the distance. Let me just use the magic binoculars here. There it is, the very first island in front of us. That's where our airport is. We're currently crosswind to said airport, so we're going to be turning in towards the airport in a moment here. One thing I'm going to do, however, I am going to turn off that AviTab moving map, because with all this light in here, you really can't see anything. It's all white, so go ahead and get rid of that. And I do have to say, this cockpit is kind of a Frankenstein's monster. The reason why I say that, you've got old tech here, you've got this radio stack, which I know what they're trying to do, but I think they need to decide what it needs to be. And then, of course, all the various controls. I think they're going for a touch screen, but it's not quite working for me. This right here is the controls for the nacelle, but there are no markings on there that tell you just exactly what percentage the nacelle should be, and nothing shows up on the PFD to even confirm where you are. I see plenty of opportunity, all of these items that are not being used, that could be used to tell you where your nacelles are. But if you look at the very top, you'll see something that says manifold pressure in HG. Well, folks, this is an electric aircraft. I'm pretty sure manifold pressure is probably not a thing in an electric aircraft. Somebody correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But that's just the way I see it. There's areas of opportunity in there, and I think that this cockpit could use a little bit more fleshing out, get away from the whole pictures of controls, and actually make it 3D. But I digress. Let's begin our approach. Alrighty folks, we are coming into Aroa and we're coming in pretty fast, so we're going to need to slow down considerably, and of course we will need to change our nacelle position. What I'm planning on doing is I want to bring it down for a VTOL landing for you, and then we'll just taxi over to our parking spot and we'll call this episode done. But before we can do that, we do need to lose a lot of airspeed and a lot of altitude. I have noticed that this thing does have the ability to trim itself. I'm talking aileron trim, elevator trim, rudder trim. However, those trim controls are not properly represented in the cockpit. You can't see anything that tells you exactly how much trim you've got. So again, a lot of it really comes down to your instincts as a virtual pilot on how you intend to fly this thing, which is exactly why I said earlier, if you're just starting out and you think, hey, this would be a really cool thing to fly, it is. Don't get me wrong. It is a very cool thing to fly, but it's going to take you a while to master it. Landing gear is now coming down, should be 3 down and locked. Honestly, I have no idea what the landing gear extension speed is on this thing. I'm just going by what the PFD says. I want to make sure that it's in the red, which is, I guess, pretty close to landing speed. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. And I'm going to put our nacelles to the full vertical position. One thing I will state, as far as the numbers go for the nacelles, they consider 0 degrees full vertical and full horizontal is 90 degrees, which honestly is a little bit backwards from what I'm used to for tilt rotors, but you know what? I can go with that if that's an AeroG thing. One area in the flight dynamics where I'm going to give this thing massive points for is its handling in VTOL. This thing is rock solid. It is ultra stable. It blows the pants off of any helicopter out there, except maybe the Chinook, because, you know, that's got the whole tandem counter-rotating blades and all that. But as it stands right now, this thing can handle a crosswind. You're seeing that right now. You can notice my cockpit's a little bit askew. And we are going exactly where I want it to go. This is precision flying, folks, and this is the kind of stuff that you get to expect with a tilt rotor. Kudos to AeroG Aviation for coming up with this aspect of the aircraft. This is what works, and this is what I really enjoy about this aircraft. If we were in New York, I bet I could put myself down on one of those rooftop helipads or something along those lines. For now, I'll settle for a runway. We made it, folks. I knew we would. Because if there's one thing I will say that is hella good about this aircraft is the fact that it performs flawlessly in VTOL. It is pretty good in conventional flight as well. The transition, obviously, that's going to take a little bit getting used to. But like I said, read the manual. You'll figure it out eventually. I will also mention that a lot of the tilt rotors, the vertical takeoff and landing aircraft that are coming, do take these principles in heart. While we're seeing it here manifested in X-Plane 11, make no bones about it. This is stuff that can come to pass in real life. And on that note, I am really hopeful that AeroG Aviation will get the financial backing and a lot of the technical support that it needs to bring an aircraft like this to real life. My only request, please make sure you call it the Beluga. I love that name, especially if you're going to keep it white the way it is right now. But as I was coming in, I was thinking about an old 70s TV show, Fantasy Island. I don't know how many of you out there remember that, but that's kind of why I've come up with the title of the video the way that it is, because I could just see Tattoo standing at the edge of the runway looking up at this thing like, what in the heck? The plane, boss, the plane! Or at least I think it's a plane. Alright, but with that having been said, I think we're just about done here. So thank you as always for watching, folks. This has been BelGeode. I have been flying in X-Plane 11. Just to remind you, the aircraft we've been using has been the AeroG Aviation AG4 eVTOL. It is payware. The link is in the video description down below. I will leave it to you to decide if this is something you like to fly, but I can tell you it's going to get some thumbs up from me. The scenery that we've been using has been XPFR, or the French scenery company's Society Islands, which includes Tahiti and Bora Bora. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give me a like. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so. And don't forget, 2020 FLIGHTSIMEXPO is happening in June, in early June, in Las Vegas. Follow the link in the video description. Get your registration, sign up, and I will see you there. Ciao.